The alien narrator was no ordinary intelligence officer. He was a high-ranking strategist, one of the finest minds in the Empire's vast intelligence division, an entity that had kept the galactic order intact for millennia. His duty was not just to analyze threats, but to eliminate them before they ever had a chance to rise. That was how the Empire maintained its dominance, by understanding danger before it could become a problem. And yet, there was a problem now. Reports had been coming in from distant worlds, whispers from civilizations on the fringes of the Empire. A species had emerged, one that was still contained within its own star system, still bound to its primitive world, still far from reaching the heights of interstellar power. And yet, they were feared. The strategist had reviewed the reports with skepticism. Fear was not an unusual reaction to a rising species. Whenever a new civilization gained strength, those around them grew uneasy. But this was different. There was no single war, no conquest, no overwhelming technological advantage that explained this fear. Only a singular, recurring phrase appeared in the reports. Humans are unstoppable. But why? The Empire had crushed entire civilizations before they could become threats. It had defeated warlords, annihilated empires that dared to challenge its authority. What could possibly make humans different? His initial assumption was simple. It had to be their weapons, their numbers, or their aggression. That was the standard formula for dangerous species. But as he combed through the data, none of these factors fit. Weapons? Humans had nothing extraordinary. Their technology was still primitive compared to the Empire's war machines. Numbers? They were not an overwhelming force. Many species had far greater populations. Aggression? They had waged wars, yes, but so had countless others. That alone did not make them unique. Something else was at play. Determined to find the truth, the strategist turned to historical records, believing he would uncover a simple explanation, a pattern, a reason, a weakness that could be exploited. Every species had a limit, a flaw, a threshold beyond which they could not survive. But as he sifted through humanity's history, he found only contradictions. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, but instead of falling, they advanced. They had suffered disasters that should have wiped them out, but each time, they rebuilt stronger than before. They had no biological superiority, yet they had conquered entire ecosystems with sheer ingenuity. It made no sense, and for the first time in his career, he felt something creeping into his mind. Not frustration, not confusion, something far worse. Doubt. The alien strategist had studied countless species, civilizations that had risen and fallen under the Empire's watchful eye. Patterns always emerged. Societies either advanced steadily, avoiding conflict, or they destroyed themselves in chaos. No species had ever thrived by constantly teetering on the edge of annihilation. But humans were different. The strategist traced their history, searching for the moment that should have ended them. He expected to find a point where they nearly collapsed, where they should have vanished like so many other failed civilizations. Instead, he found impossibility after impossibility, wars that should have crippled their species. Yet after each war, they only advanced further. Plagues that should have devastated their populations. Yet they found cures, built stronger immune systems, and flourished. Natural disasters that should have erased entire nations. Yet they rebuilt, bigger, better, more resilient than before. Even self-inflicted destruction, their own greed, ambition, and recklessness should have been their downfall. But each time, they learned, evolved, and became even more dangerous. No species should function this way. The strategist turned to records from other civilizations. War was always a mistake. It was avoided whenever possible, as it weakened species, drained resources, and led to stagnation or collapse. But humans were the exception. They didn't just survive war, they used it to become stronger. Each conflict refined their tactics, pushing them to develop better strategies, better weapons, better defenses. Each disaster forced them to innovate, accelerating their technology beyond its natural pace. Each moment of suffering hardened them, forged them, turned weakness into strength. They did not avoid chaos. They embraced it. And worst of all, they learned from it. For the first time, a feeling of unease crept into the strategist's mind. He had assumed humans were just another species, one that would rise, reach its peak, and eventually decline. But what if they had no peak? What if they were not a species bound by the same limitations as the rest of the galaxy? What if every disaster, every war, every hardship was not an obstacle to them, but fuel? And if that were true, then the Empire had made a terrible mistake in thinking they could be contained. The alien strategist had seen enough to know that humanity, as a civilization, defied logic. They had survived disasters that should have ended them, evolved through suffering rather than in spite of it. But perhaps, he reasoned, this was merely a quirk of history, an accident of circumstance. Maybe their civilization had been lucky. So he turned his attention to the individual human. If their species thrived in chaos, then surely the individual would not. A single being, when removed from its society, when isolated from its kind, must show weakness, must reveal the flaw in their nature. And yet, the deeper he looked, the less sense it made. Humans, when placed in extreme environments, refused to give in. They did not submit to despair the way other species did. They endured. They adapted. They found ways to survive where no survival should have been possible. The strategists studied accounts of explorers lost in barren wastelands, of prisoners held for decades in solitary confinement, of warriors who fought even when they had nothing left but their own will to survive. Humans should have broken under such pressure, but instead they hardened. Even those who had lost everything, their homes, their families, their very bodies, did not surrender to hopelessness. They found purpose in their suffering. They turned pain into fuel, into drive, into something more dangerous than any weapon. And then there were the cases that disturbed him the most. The humans who faced certain death and laughed. There were records, too many to dismiss as anomalies, of humans who, when confronted with their own demise, showed no fear at all. Some smiled. Some mocked their enemies. Some walked toward death as if it were nothing more than an inconvenience. The strategist could not understand it. Fear was universal. Self-preservation was a fundamental law of existence. Every species, no matter how advanced, experienced the primal terror of death. Every species except humanity, because humans didn't just accept death. They defied it. They fought when fighting was useless. They survived when survival was impossible. And when they had nothing left, when all was lost, they still refused to surrender. The strategist felt something foreign creep into his mind. It was not curiosity, not confusion. It was something he had never experienced before. A slow, growing fear. Because a species that cannot be broken cannot be defeated. The alien strategist had seen enough. Humanity did not make sense. Their history should have been a cautionary tale, a story of a species that rose too fast and collapsed under its own weight. But instead, they thrived where others failed. Their civilizations should have crumbled under war, yet war only made them stronger. Their bodies should have been their greatest weakness, yet they adapted to every condition, every injury. Their minds should have shattered under extreme pressure, yet they endured the unimaginable. But there was still one question that haunted him. Why? Why didn't they break? Why didn't fear control them as it did every other species? What made them different? Determined to find the answer, the strategist ordered a simulation. He took everything the Empire had learned about warfare, about survival, about psychological limits, and created the perfect test. A war scenario designed to measure humanity's strategic capabilities, to see how they truly thought, how they would respond under extreme duress. He input variables based on hundreds of species the Empire had encountered. He tested them against scenarios where other civilizations had failed. He prepared for the logical outcomes: retreat, surrender, collapse. And then he introduced humanity. The results were impossible. The humans did not retreat. They did not surrender. They did not collapse. Instead, they adapted in real time. Their battle strategies evolved mid-fight. They learned from every mistake, corrected every weakness on the spot. They anticipated traps that should have worked flawlessly. They turned defeat into opportunity. The worst part? They fought as if they had nothing to lose. They sacrificed resources without hesitation. They abandoned traditional tactics if they proved ineffective. They refused to cling to convention, to familiarity. Instead, they sought victory at any cost. This was not how warfare was supposed to work. Every species had rules, had limits, had a breaking point. But humans had no rules, no limits, no threshold where they simply accepted defeat. The simulation was shut down prematurely. The strategist sat in silence, staring at the results, and realized he had been asking the wrong question this entire time. It was never about why humans were dangerous. It was about why they were the only species that refused to accept reality. Where others saw a dead end, they created a path. Where others saw destruction, they saw opportunity. Where others saw death, they saw a challenge. The strategist finally understood. Humans were not just survivors. They were defiers of fate, and there was no force in the galaxy that could ever truly stop them. The alien strategist had spent his life cataloging civilizations, mapping their weaknesses, and ensuring that no species ever posed a challenge to the Empire's dominance. Every species had a limit, a natural boundary they could never cross. Even the most advanced empires, the most warlike civilizations, the most intelligent beings in the galaxy, they all had a point where they stopped progressing. But humans had no such point. They evolved without stopping. They learned faster than they should. They thrived in suffering. And worst of all, they refused to accept reality as it was. That was their secret. That was their ultimate weapon, not their intelligence. Many species were more intelligent. Not their strength, many were stronger. Not their technology, many were far more advanced. It was their ability to dream. No other species had this. Every civilization accepted the laws of the universe and operated within them. They expanded until they could expand no more, then stagnated, content with what they had achieved. Humans did not. They imagined what did not yet exist, and then they created it. They saw a world they wanted, and then they forced reality to bend to their will. A species with no wings dreamed of flying, and they built machines to take to the skies. A species born bound to their world refused to accept it, so they created vessels to breach the void. A species with weak bodies and fragile bones should have accepted their limitations, yet they built weapons to become the deadliest force in the universe. The strategist realized now why humanity was different from every species that had ever existed. They did not wait for evolution to shape them. They shaped themselves. They saw nature's laws not as boundaries, but as challenges to overcome. They did not wait for their species to adapt over thousands of years. They adapted themselves in a single lifetime. They weren't just survivors. They were creators. And that made them the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever seen, because they would never accept their place in the universe. They would change it. The alien strategist had studied warlords, empires, and entire civilizations that had once believed themselves invincible. He had watched them rise, peak, and inevitably fall. The Empire had crushed countless threats before they could grow too large, always ensuring they remained the sole superpower of the galaxy. But humanity wasn't like the others. Every species had an end. Humans didn't. They were not bound by the same rules. They did not stop at natural limits. They erased them. Now, the strategist sat before the Galactic Council, presenting his findings. He expected skepticism. He expected disbelief. Instead, he was met with something far more unsettling: panic. Other species had felt it first. The Empire had intercepted classified transmissions from civilizations that had come into contact with humanity. Their words had all carried the same theme. They do not stop. They do not surrender. They do not accept defeat. The humans had not yet expanded beyond their home system, but it was only a matter of time. They were already reaching outward, already building ships, already searching for something more. The council members, ancient, powerful rulers who had never known fear, were afraid. One of them spoke, voice barely controlled. They must be contained. Another followed. If they leave their system, there will be no stopping them. The final order came without hesitation. We strike first. We wipe them out before they reach the stars. The decision had been made. A full-scale preemptive attack. But the strategist, the one who had uncovered the truth about humanity, felt cold dread settle in his mind. Because if there was one thing he had learned, it was this. If the Empire failed to wipe them out completely, if even a single remnant of humanity survived, they would return. And when they did, they would be unstoppable. The order had been given. The Empire would strike first. Humanity would be eradicated before they could reach the stars. The strategist had spent his life ensuring that threats were eliminated before they could ever challenge the Empire. But for the first time, he knew they had made a mistake, because they were already too late. As he reviewed the latest intelligence reports, a cold realization settled in his mind. Humanity was still technologically primitive by the Empire's standards. They had not yet developed faster-than-light travel. Their fleets were crude. Their weapons lacked the sophistication of intergalactic warfare. And yet, something was wrong. There were reports, strange movements in human space. Their industrial production had increased exponentially. Unmanned probes had been detected moving beyond their system. Some had already disappeared into deep space. More disturbing were the intercepted transmissions. The humans were looking for something. They were looking for them. The strategist's breath caught as he accessed a final classified file, recently retrieved from an Empire surveillance probe hidden within Earth's system. It was a transmission, a simple message broadcast in all directions. Not a distress call, not a cry for help. A warning. It read, "We are coming." The strategist's mind reeled. Had they known? Had humanity always known they were being watched? Had they been preparing for war this entire time? The Council had ordered their destruction. The fleets were already mobilizing. But it no longer mattered, because humanity was already on the move. The Empire had believed they were the ones studying humanity. But all this time, humanity had been studying them. And now, as the attack fleet set course for Earth, the strategist finally understood the terrifying truth. They had not chosen to destroy humanity. Humanity had chosen to let them try. And in doing so, the Empire had sealed its fate. Because if even a single human survived, the galaxy would never be the same again.